Sir, I am very grateful to a very large number of honorable members who have participated in this discussion. Most of them have supported the bill. Some have also either raised certain issues for clarification, as also certain other reforms which are relevant for us for the future. But before I deal with what a lot of our distinguished friends here have said, I must start by reacting to what the Honorable Member Mr. Das said. In fact, his was a pain and agony which an ordinary litigant has to bear as far as the legal system is concerned. He has to bear it because he finds that the system is becoming costlier. System at times is very slow. But let me say, and I'm sure a lot of members here who belong to the legal fraternity are fully conscious of the drawbacks within the legal system. We feel that our legal system has many strengths also. It's a fair, independent system. It's a powerful system. But it's a slow system, and we are trying to correct that speed process by virtue of several legislations. But eventually, the success and failure of the implementation of a large number of these legislations will also depend upon how the legal fraternity as a whole, both lawyers and judges, react to a legislation of this kind. Let me also say, even when we mention and state the problem, there is a lot of work which is being done. Figures were mentioned with regard to what is the pendency in our courts. The pendency in the subordinate courts in this country is a little over 2 crores, about 2 crores and 3 lakhs. For the last 5 years, it's more or less static. Now, when we state this figure, this looks very alarming. But when we compare it with another figure, that every year 1 crore new cases are filed, and approximately 1 crore cases in the subordinate courts are disposed of. Our problem today is how do we beat down this backlog and bring this figure of 2 crores downwards so that the delay which takes place in the system itself can be curtailed. But then a system which is capable of disposing of almost 1 crore cases in the subordinate courts every year. We are a large country, we have 1/6 of the world's population. We had more than 1 lakh of cases in our Supreme Court, but by just speed in the last 10-12 years and by various other managerial skills in the registry, they brought the figure down now to about 21 or 22,000. And therefore, to say that the legal system, really nothing much happens, at times may come out of our anger or our anguish when we react to a particular situation. But I think through this bill we are considering as to how do we resolve this whole problem. Some honorable members raised the question, though it directly doesn't arise in the Civil Procedure Code, in relation to the vacancies. This is a matter of serious concern. Both the judicial institution and we've been taking it up with the states, with the high courts. There are at present about a little more than 1,800 vacancies in the subordinate judiciary in the country, 155 in the high courts. And we are taking it up very strongly with the high courts that the recommendations with regard to this must be expedited so that these vacancies itself can be filled up. Recently we had a pronouncement of the Supreme Court which said that you must radically increase the number of judges in the subordinate courts. Now, of course, this will be a burden on the exchequer itself, but it's a welcome suggestion. And in phases, we have to increase the number so that this figure of 2 crores that we find in the subordinate courts, at least there are more judges who can deal with this situation. Sir, as far as the specific provisions are concerned, my friend Mr. Sibal raised some very substantive points. He's absolutely right when he says that our procedural laws, in view of the changing situation in the world, the changing experiments which other countries have tried, must also require an overhaul. So even when this particular bill was discussed by the Law Commission, and when they sent us this report, they also mentioned, and I'll just read the opening paragraph of what the Law Commission told us. In the second phase of this work, the Commission intends to take up the revision of the code in its entirety, since a comprehensive revision of the entire code would take comparatively longer time. Similarly, for the purposes of reviewing the functioning of our criminal procedure code, we've already appointed a committee which is now going around the whole country, meeting lawyers, litigants, police officers, state governments, holding seminars, holding discussions They've already held about 4 major programs all around the country, and by the end of the year, we expect that committee in relation to the Criminal Procedure Code also to make to give us its recommendations. Some substantive points which have been raised. Mr. Sibbal raised a very important question with regard to the provisions of Order 18. Order 18 uses the word may in relation to addressing oral arguments, and with the permission of the court shall in relation to giving written submissions if the court so agrees for its purpose. Well, I may assure him that the intention of the government certainly is not that oral arguments in any way are to be curtailed. The reason I may mention why the word may has been used is because when you legislate and you follow a particular pattern which is used in several laws, the Criminal Procedure Code has a similar provision in section 314. And it is almost similar to the language of 314 that this language of Order 18 has been used. And even in the Criminal Procedure Code, where 314 says the accused or his counsel may address oral arguments, it has never been interpreted to mean that there is a discretion whether he may or may not be permitted. The word may perhaps has been used in order to give the right to the accused in the Criminal Procedure Code and a similar right to a litigant in the Civil Procedure Code that he is entitled to if he so desires. I have no doubt that no judge is ever going to deny to a litigant a right to address his case orally. All that is intended is that we all have this experience that at times oral arguments continue for an indefinite period. Particularly, this has been seen more in the high courts than any other layer of the judicial institution. So, depending upon the subject matter, if a judge so desires, he may regulate the time as far as the oral hearing is concerned. This power to regulate the time of oral hearing is also contained in section 314 of the Civil Procedure Code. One issue which has been raised by several members is in relation to the requirement of a security under Order 39. I may clarify that though this issue really no longer remains very relevant today, there is a provision in the original Civil Procedure Code under Order 39 Rule 2. Order 39 Rule 1 relates to injunctions in relation to property. Order 39 Rule 2 is injunctions in relation to breach of contract or any continuing breach. Order 39 Rule 2, Sub-Rule 2 already says, and this is the old CPC, the court may by order grant such injunction on such terms as the duration of this injunction, keeping an account, giving security or otherwise as the court thinks fit. Now, this is a provision which has been time tested. This is applicable to Order 39 Rule 2 but not applicable to Order 39 Rule 1. The amendment in 1999 brought in a provision in relation to Order 39 Rule 1 which was different in language from this provision and almost made granting of a direction with regard to security mandatory. This led to various apprehensions because people may not come to the court to agitate their disputes in relation to a property because in case they are confronted with a very large amount of security which is to be given. And therefore, it was felt that the provision requires an alteration. What we did in consultation with the Bar Council and the Bar Associations, that the provision in relation to Order 39 Rule 2 ipso facto now also was made applicable to Order 39 Rule 1. That was the purport of the 2000 amendment. But the standing committee felt that no special situation has arisen since this CPC has been in force, which shows that the provisions lacked in view of this provision not being applicable to Order 39 Rule 1, and therefore suggested that we continue with the situation as it exists in the original CPC as such. In deference to the opinion of the standing committee, we accepted that suggestion, and in the official amendment which we have moved, this suggestion for making the 39(2) provision applicable to Rule 39(1), we have suggested that we delete it, so the provision in the original CPC continues to be maintained. That's the official amendment as such which we have suggested. Another provision which invited certain discussions was in relation to appointment of local commissioners for the purposes of recording the evidence. Sir, the position as it stands of today, the judge has to record the evidence himself, but what some high courts and some other courts have been doing, though very rarely, that if both the litigants agree, they refer the recording of evidence to a commissioner because the commissioner doesn't have the kind of time pressures which a court has, and therefore is able to register to record the evidence expeditiously and file a record with the court. Now, we had extensive discussions. There were several issues which came up. One issue was, in the trial courts, some litigants in relation to small disputes may actually be so poor and the stakes may be so little that for them to afford a commissioner's fee itself may be a little difficult. So we came out with a suggestion that as a rule, high courts where there is an original site, evidence can be recorded by commissioners because cases of larger stakes are there. In the subordinate courts, we left it to the discretion of the judge whether he wants to record it himself or it can be recorded by a commissioner himself. But after considering various suggestions and the report of the standing committee, we were now of the view that there need not be any distinction between the two forums, and both in relation to the high courts and the lower courts, if the judge feels that the subject matter is such that the evidence in the interest of justice can be recorded by a commissioner, he will direct to do so. I am sure some judicial forum will give proper guidelines by a judicial pronouncement as to which cases are to be recorded by the commissioner and where are cases where the judges themselves may record it. May I just give examples? Today, and it's a figure which, at least when I realized it, it shook my conscience. Banks and financial institutions have lent money to people. Every time an issue comes up, we raise the issue of non-performing assets. I tried to check up before a forum like the Debt Recovery Tribunal, where monies have been loaned by banks and financial institutions. The total claims pending, and these are all monies given through banking transactions, through checks, through drafts. The total claims pending are 1,10,000 crores. And the only reason why people who have taken these monies benefit, because they know that recording of evidence date will be fixed after a couple of years, and then you take an adjournment and you get another few years. Cases which are based on negotiable instruments, where checks have bounced, where monies have been given and payments are almost admitted. There are litigants who are waiting to recover their properties back. Now, these kind of cases, if the judge feels in the interest of justice, can be referred to a commissioner for recording of evidence, and we've said the commissioners will record evidence and return the record in 60 days, because in normal civil cases, except in very high commercial disputes, it doesn't take more than 4 or 5 sittings to record the entire evidence of a case. And this one measure, if implemented, can reduce to 60 days a stage of a litigation which otherwise will take several years. And therefore, we've left it in the first instance to the judge himself on his discretion to decide whether a case is required the evidence is required to be recorded by a commissioner or not. One objection which was made was that traditionally under our law of evidence, a judge must also know what the demeanor of a particular witness is. Now, this was originally conceived to be so because once trials started, till such time trials concluded, the judge would record evidence, he would immediately hear arguments and then pronounce his judgment. Now, this was the original concept under which we had a provision that he must also know whether a witness, what is his conduct like, what is his demeanor like, does he appear to be reliable or otherwise. Today, we actually have a situation where every date of evidence is fixed after 2 years. The judge who records the evidence, after 3 successors, somebody else comes and decides the case. And therefore, the successors are not likely to know what the demeanor of a witness before a predecessor was. And therefore, this provision really, though relevant, is not being so effectively implemented, and for this merely to stand in the way of recording evidence itself may not be sufficient in itself, particularly when a stage of a case itself could be curtailed if this provision took place. On oral arguments being curtailed, I am sure my very distinguished colleagues, lawyer members who are present here would remember that when we argue some important cases, we look at the calendar as to how many days it will take. Let us recollect how many days did the case in the most important case in the world take? The case which decided who the president of the US would be. Before the US Supreme Court, Mr. Al Gore versus Bush took 1.5 hours. But an ordinary property dispute, some intellectual property injunction can take weeks and months being argued before our courts. And nobody says that in those jurisdictions, justice gets buried merely because you regulate the time during which cases are going to be heard. Sir, there are several important arguments, suggestions which have been made, and one particular suggestion which has been made by Justice Mishra with regard to the injunctions being applicable for a limited period of time. With all his judicial experience, for this, do we really need an amendment to the law, or can our judges not do it within the existing framework of law? Sir, I'll just remind you, when the Constitution was amended in the mid-70s, we added to Article 226, Sub-Article 3. Sub-Article 3 said that the injunction, when it is granted in pursuant to a writ jurisdiction, and the person against whom it is granted or the state against whom it is granted moves an application for vacation, if the application is not disposed of, the injunction is deemed to be vacated. Now, I am sure my very senior colleagues may not remember many cases where we've seen this provision actually being implemented before the courts. And therefore, similarly, even while granting injunctions, some courts have always granted injunctions in terms of language. Injunction granted for a period of 6 weeks, serve the defendant within 2 weeks and come before me. But effectively, it is for the judges to actually regulate the power under Order 39 and grant those injunctions. And I am sure, seeing the equities of a particular case, if they grant these injunctions in this manner, it is perfectly within the powers of this court. I am sure we as lawmakers would welcome a situation of this kind. So some suggestion was made with regard to the provisions of service of summons. I don't think we should be particularly worried on this service of summons by couriers, because courier business has been acquiring a certain amount of credibility. They serve within 24 hours, 48 hours. And that is why we've said every court will have, every district court will have, every high court will have its own service of courier agencies. And if they find somebody is unreliable, he can be taken off the list of that agency. They would be interested in their own businesses, and their own credibility will ensure that they serve the businesses well. Order 5, Rule 16 itself provides for signatures on personal service, which is not a postal service. Similarly, would be the provisions in relation to this, because this would be another mode of personal service itself. So one last submission, if we see the overall picture as it would emerge, Mr. Panda said that there is a democracy tax. In a democracy tax, you try and balance between speed, you try and balance between the decision-making process, and you are able to carry all sections along. The 99 amendments have certain very well-considered provisions. Some provisions have been smoothened out after discussion. Today, the CPC as would look in terms of its time frame. You file a case, you serve through expeditious processes, through postal services, through process fee, through electronic devices, through courier services. So instead of spending months and years, as Dr. Singhvi pointed out, you can serve the defendant within days. The maximum period for a written statement is ordinarily 30 days. For special reasons, the judge can extend it by another 60 days. Issues get framed. If the judge record evidence, it depends on how much time the judge takes. If he refers it to a commissioner, ordinarily within 60 days, unless the subject matter requires extension of time. And thereafter, arguments for which he can curtail the time. And finally, a judgment which we have said he must ordinarily deliver within 30 days. Well, I can only say to what Mr. Das had said, we as lawmakers can frame this. But to what extent this is mandatorily implemented is really for the bar and the bench to really cooperate within the system and decide this. I'll just end, sir, by narrating two anecdotes, because Mr. Panda said that the Chinese system and the due process there. The Vice President of the Chinese Supreme Court was in India recently. And we were asking each other, how long does it take for cases to be tried in our jurisdictions? So I was trying to very convincingly tell him that we are now trying to shorten our CPC time. And he was being very apologetic. And he told me, sir, our system is now delayed. Originally it used to take 2 weeks. Now it can go up for 4 to 6 weeks to decide a case. That is the system which those countries have really been able to follow. When I said in response to Mr. Das that even our legal fraternity will have to consider, I remember an incident which I experienced. Somebody had asked a question in Parliament as to how many judgments are reserved for a period of more than 1 year after arguments have been heard. I addressed letters to Chief Justices all over the country, that please give me the figures of each High Court, how many judgments are reserved. Some High Court said none, some said gave the honest figure, and those who didn't want to give the actual figure says it's a question which relates to independence of judiciary. And therefore we will not tell you the figure. Now I entered a further correspondence that is the figure, just as we are entitled to know how many cases, we are also entitled to know how many judgments, so the lawmaker must know where the shoe pinches so that the law can be corrected accordingly. Now somehow one of the newspapers published it, that there is this debate going on whether the courts can inform the number of judgments pending or not. I went to England last summer and I called on the Lord Chancellor. And this curious newspaper cutting where it had appeared, through the internet had been made available to him before my meeting with him. So when I went and met him amongst the various discussions, he said, I am told you are also having a problem with regard to delay in delivery of judgments. I said, how did you know? He said, well, in the brief which was put up to me, this was informed to me. And I said, when you said also, means is there a similar problem here? He said, well, a similar problem did arise. And I can only tell you, advise you what I told my colleagues. I told my colleagues that independence can never be a camouflage for inefficiencies. And thereafter the debate in my country came to an end. Therefore, I am sure Mr. Das will appreciate that we in this legislature can make laws, the state governments, the central governments makes infrastructures available, but we expect the cooperation of the entire system if we do expect expedition of this form to take place. Thank you, sir.
All right.